Thank you, Austin. So thank you all again for joining. We're so happy to have you all here on this panel discussion. So during our program at UAA, the interns, we are all studying texts and videos of the major industry and moments in powerhouse professionals. Nick Martucci has helped us facilitate this panel series as a way for us to engage more directly with the professionals in the industry. We've organized some questions. I'm sure you all have had an opportunity to look at those questions, I hope. And I'm now going to introduce Nick Szatmari. I think I got that, yes. A senior agent at Universal Attractions Agency and a partner since 2019. Nick has been at UAA the 13 years and he's been responsible for George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic, in many of UAA's larger touring projects. He will be joining the conversation today alongside a few more of our agency interns. And we're gonna go ahead and just get started with some icebreaker questions. And this will be for all of you all to answer. So I guess we can start with Diane and then go around, and I'll go ahead and ask the first question. And so the first question is, where did you get your start in the industry?
You know, it's interesting because you are a group of interns, and I always knew, I mean, since high school, that I wanted to do the music, you know, be in the music business. So in college, I interned at Capitol Records, and then I went on to intern for one of my current clients, management companies. And they hired me the day after I graduated, and thus began my passion for management. So it wasn't until several years later that I became his manager, but essentially internships, highly recommend.
Awesome, and we'll go ahead and allow Mr. James to answer that question as well.
Hi there, everyone. For me, I think my first two loves in life were music and film. I wanted my career to be about that. When I went to study at university in London, I took the opportunity to work for anybody and everybody who'd give me a minute. PR companies, record labels, production companies, TV stations, etc. And really from that experience, I cultivated relationships, which I sort of leveraged into a position for myself. At a film production company and started getting into producing movies over the last 10 years. And we've had a lot of success with that whilst continuing working in the music business. And here we are, you know, I've managed to find a balance of music and film and all the things that I love, and working with great artists. That's what always drove me.
Thank you for that. Mr. Marty, we'll go ahead and allow you to.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to sound redundant because of James and Diane, but you know, I grew up in the business. I was a music fan in high school and knew that it was something that I'd love to be involved with. So I started my career as a promoter rep for Bill Graham. I also was a promoter rep for the Budweiser Superfest, which were a series of festival concerts that happened in the late 80s and early 90s. And then I went on to become a production manager, mostly for jazz artists, George Benson, Kenny G. And then eventually I became a tour manager in 1985. And the first client that I ever tour managed was a singer named Bill Withers.
Wow.
Thank you for that. We'll allow Mr. John to go ahead and answer.
Hey, everybody. And first of all, I'm sorry, I'm very sick. So if I sound like I'm sick, it's because I am. I didn't go to college out of high school. I joined a punk rock band at 18, and I toured the country, and I started booking shows, and I met another band in my community whose band leader had all sorts of charts and graphs and printouts of college radio stations and all the stuff. He was sending cassette tapes or or CDs to, or 7-inch vinyls. And I was just really into what he was doing, and we became like really close friends. And I let him be my early mentor. I then decided that I wanted to do it for a living, so I sent a bunch of resumes out, and I ended up at a company called Associated Booking Corporation that at the time represented, among many others, BB King and Roberta Flack and the Four Tops, and Mary J. Blige was brand new then, and Bernie Mac was there. And I was a little bit of a fish out of water coming from a punk rock background, but I made it work for 5 years there. I was still performing this whole time, moonlighting as a punk rock drummer and daytiming booking Chuck Mangione shows. And then I got a job at a hard rock and metal agency called Pinnacle that still exists, and was booking stuff like Slayer and Rob Zombie and Oasis and top level hard rock and contemporary rock stuff. I started signing bands there. In 2012, I left there, went to the Windish agency, brought my roster with me, except for a few of the harder metal bands, and kind of shifted gears into more jam bands and weirdo math rock bands that don't make any money. And that got bought by Paradigm, and I was at Paradigm from 2015 to the pandemic day where I got furloughed. And I started a new company with 5 other of the furloughed Paradigm agents, which we now run. It's a little over a year old, called Arrival. And that's where I am. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And Chris, you're up now.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I actually started when I was really young. My mother made a record in Nashville when I was 7 years old, and we lived on top of a bar on Lower Broadway called the Turf. The bar was called the Turf, and Mom sang at the Turf at night. And I knew from an early age that, the people that created the music weren't necessarily the people who were singing them. So I always wanted to be the person that could still go to the store by themselves. I ended up moving back home. I moved back again right after high school. Ended up working for a bail bondsman doing skip tracing, finding fugitives at 18. Moved back to East Tennessee again, and now I've been here for about 26 years, and finally had some hits as a songwriter, and I was in a rock band before I moved to Nashville this last time. And it's funny how I always tell people, all the guys I really wanted, the rock guys I wanted to write with before I moved to Nashville, I actually ended up getting into writing in the country scene to end up writing with some of the rock guys I always wanted to write with. So it worked out. So lucky redneck, in other words.
Here.
Thank you. And Bonnie, you're up next.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me. I'm excited. Janina, it's so good to see you. Janina was a student that we studied together at MTSU. I got a job I was probably 14, 15 years old. And the guy, it was just a store, and they had a record bin. For those of you too young to know what a record bin was, a representative traveled through our part of the state and would fill up the record bin with the new releases. And they were physical copies that you could touch. And so I asked him if I could be in charge of the record bin. And I love album covers. I love the copy on the back. I love every part of an album. I love music. I love words. And you will find today that I use a lot of words. So hang on. And I noticed on the back of those records, written by, and then would have names that were other than the artist. And I, like Chris, I never had a desire to be an artist, but I loved the idea of writing songs for other people. So fast forward, I got a degree in English, started my master's degree in creative writing, and partway through my master's degree, I decided to just kind of put everything in my car and moved to Nashville, which was 1992, so a few days ago, and lived in a small apartment on Broadway and just began to play music anywhere and everywhere. I play piano, play guitar, anywhere that someone would sit and listen, and started writing and meeting other writers, and very quickly found a place to call home here in Nashville and have been here ever since. So I am of the belief that it is very important to cross educate yourself. I need to know what managers do. Managers need to know what I do. I think agents need to know what managers do. I think publishers need to know what labels do. All of us need to educate ourselves in all of the areas, and that is an area I didn't always do as much because I was so busy just writing songs. So Janina, thank you for having me today, because this is so good for me, is to sit and listen to the wisdom of all of you. So that's how I started, was looking at written by on the back of records, wanting my name to be there.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. I'm already so blown away by your story so far, and I'm going to turn the next portion over to Mr. Nixon, Marty.
Thank you so much, Ebony. Hi, everybody. Again, thanks for joining us. Thank you for the icebreaker questions. I'm going to do a little bit more background on everybody, just so the viewers know more about who's participating here. First, I'll introduce our panelists. Obviously, give a little wave as I call your name so they know who I'm talking about. First of all, we have John Bongiorno, as he mentioned, from Arrival Artists. We've got Bonnie Baker, who's a songwriter working with Hunter Hayes, Reba McEntire, and many others. Marty Horn is tour manager. He's worked with Beyonce, Fleetwood Mac, Barbra Streisand, Shakira, Backstreet Boys, and many others, as he mentioned. We have Chris Wallin, songwriter for Kenny Chesney, Trace Adkins, Toby Keith, Garth Brooks, and many more. Diane Dragonette, who's manager for Jeffrey Gaines. And James Abdou joining us from London, manager for UB40. So thank you again for making time for this conversation. We also have our intern panelists with us today, and that includes Ebony Houston, Austin Cappetta, William Cordisco, Janina Monk, and Jennifer Trico. So we've gotten through the icebreaker portion. I'm going to pass it back to, I'm going to pass this over to Austin, who has a question specifically for John. Austin, take it away.
Yeah, first, why don't we have all the interns introduce themselves to you, though? I can start. So I've been interning at UAA for the past 3 months or so, and I'm currently on the film, TV, and theater department. And I graduated from the University of Connecticut this past May. And I love the entertainment industry because it's always filled with life, and it's just filled with so many creative people like yourselves, and it's just awesome to meet everybody. And a fun fact about me is that I'm writing a book and a musical. All right, Ebony, why don't you go next?
Hello, everyone. My name is Ebony Houston. I am currently assisting in tour booking. I am also getting ready to graduate tomorrow from Florida A&M University in broadcast journalism. And one fun fact about me is I wrote a few songs for George Clinton.
That's awesome.
All right, Janina, why don't you take the hot seat now?
Hi, my name is Janina Jacqueline Monk. I am an intern for fairs, festivals, and casinos. I have been a student at MTSU under the recording industry major with a commercial songwriting focus and a music minor. I actually graduate this Saturday, so I'm really excited about that. One thing that I really love about entertainment is the fact that we get to be so creative. We get to create something out of absolutely nothing. And so I think that is beautiful. So, yeah.
right, William, it's all you.
Yeah, so my name's William Cordisco. I'm an intern here. I started at the beginning of September. I'm from New York right now. I'm going to school at SUNY Oneonta, upstate. I'm a senior, hopefully graduating this December, God willing. For a fun fact, in 2019, DMC from Run DMC came to do like a speech or something at Oneonta, and since I grew up in New York, I was always a big hip hop fan, and he was one of my heroes. And I was outside. I had music playing on my phone, and I was just messing around freestyling by myself. And he came out to like get some air before he had to go on, and he started freestyling with me. So that was probably one of the craziest moments of my life.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, Jen.
Hi guys, my name is Jen Trico. I am a graduate from FIT with advertising and marketing, and I am an intern for UAA since September. What I love about the entertainment industry is, like Bonnie said, the album covers, because as a fun fact, I also own a painting business on the side. I love to paint. So the album covers are my favorite creative piece to look at. So.
Well, as Ebony said, I'm going to start off the more individualistic questions, and we're going to start with John. And so one of the questions that we really wanted to ask you is, because we know that you started Arrival. Oh, I'm sorry. And we wanted to know what the process of starting an agency was like, and if there were any challenges that came up.
Well, it was unique because we started an agency, out of the pandemic. So one of the major pros was that for the first time in pretty much the history of agencies, there was a giant lot of agents without homes. Bunch of people left in the water trying to find a raft, so to speak. When Paradigm laid off all of those agents, and then shortly thereafter all the other agencies did, we found ourselves on a Zoom call every day at noon, literally 70 agents just trying to share notes. What do you know about this? What does your contract say for force majeure of your these kind of things. And I think slowly over time, between March and July of 2020, we started whittling down into smaller groups based on relationships mainly, and ethos, relationships and ethos. And, we decided that we were going to move ahead and take the opportunity to be our own bosses for once. And, it was an ambitious move. I personally was not really into the idea of owning a company. I just wanted to be an agent and just book shows, but I was convinced that this would be a good idea. And, somebody said to me at one point, which I think was a pivotal point for me. Somebody said, let me know when you talk to somebody who runs their own business that says how unhappy they are doing it. Find somebody that says that. And I was like, all right, well, that's an interesting comment. And I know a lot that do. And I know a lot of managers that have boutique shops, and a lot of agents have boutique shops. And it was an easy choice. The X factor for us also was that we needed somebody to run the company. We found somebody that was available in Matt Yaseko. He ran the Billions Corporation for a long time during their heyday with St. Vincent and Vampire Weekend and Mumford & Sons. And he was currently not running Billions. He was working at Plus One, and he was looking to get back into the agency business as a COO, kind of like the leader. The top of the pyramid, so to speak, whereas the agents beneath him, who didn't have any experience being, limited experience being leaders, but certainly no experience being company owners, were able to be guided by him. And I think that was pivotal. So that's pretty much how that happened. It was more done out of necessity. At the time I had one, I really have one client that dwarfs above all my other clients. They're called Krungbin, and they are, without them, I'm not nearly, I'm not nearly as successful as I am without them, because they dwarf everybody else. And they were very supportive of us starting a company. And to be honest, if they or their manager came to me at that moment and said, you need to be at a big agency, I'd probably be at a big agency, So a lot of the decision was made based on the support of my biggest client. Yeah, that's the answer.
It's a great story. And then we do have one other one for you that we wanted to ask now. And that is, what is a basic rule that you live by as an agent?
Yeah, I've got a couple of these for sure. Two in particular, I think for me that have worked. I find in this business that everybody's full of shit. And I think one of the things that I guide by is I am not full of shit. I talk straight. I have a 25 years experience of telling people things that they don't necessarily want to hear, but in order for them to get where they want to get, they do need to hear it. For a moment before Arrival became Arrival, we were talking about calling the company Kid Gloves, because that is something that we need as agents, is to coddle, but at the same time, paint a clear picture of the situation to an artist or a manager who's in a bubble and smelling their own fumes in a way. So that is one thing. I think that there's a lot of, anybody that's been in this business long enough knows that what I'm saying is true. This business is full of people that are just so full of shit. And so there's that. I would also say that for me personally, organization is key. I know that it sounds silly, but my desk is clean. My inbox is usually under 20 or 30. I have a ton of folders where I have artist folders, and under those artist folders, I have times of the year that these scenarios. So I have a folder for a band, and underneath it, it's, Q1 2022, Q2 2022. And then I have folders for Asia, and I have folders for Brazil, and I have folders and that way it saves me a lot of time. And I think organization comes hand in hand with time management. And I think that the more that you're able to make the most of your time, the more balls you're able to juggle, and the more balls you're able to juggle, the more money you're able to generate.
That is some awesome advice. And now I'm going to turn it over to William, who's going to ask some of the questions to the managers.
Yeah, this first one's just kind of a for everybody. Briefly explain times when you might need to communicate with tour managers and agents. I guess we can start with Diane.
I mainly in the present am dealing with agents more than tour managers. My clients on a limited budget since especially COVID times. So he is his own, along with me doing all the advancing. He is very self-sufficient. With agents, I appreciated John's thing about people generally needing the truth. I try to have very open dialogue and reality checks on things with agents, because I think keeping an artist in reality is extremely important, especially my main client, Jeffrey Gaines. been working with him in some capacity for 30 years. You know, I worked for his old management. 7 years later, he came to me and asked me to manage him. He's had his highs where he had hits and was on major labels. And it's been more of a struggle in the last 7 years, being, you know, on a much smaller label and much more do it yourself. So you need to adjust to the various realities, and it's not always been easy. But I'm fortunate that he's been willing to walk that walk. So I think with an agent, it's mainly important to work as a partner and not against them. And, you know, I think honesty is always key rather than trying to feed them a line, because if you don't deal with the truth of the situation, you can't help your artist. And that's what I found most effective. Hopefully we'll have a tour manager again, you know, in the near future, but that's not been a reality in the recent couple of years.
James, would you want to speak on that a little? You want me to repeat the question, or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Briefly explain times where you might need to communicate with tour managers and agents.
Okay, I mean, for us, it's kind of all the time. It's very regular communication, right? So with tour managers, you know, me and my business partner, Matt, we're very hands-on on the business. So with agents and regular communication, we sort of, like with UAA and Jeff, we kind of, you know, set a vision or a mandate for something we want to do, and they get to work to go and do it. And we give them a hard time, pushing them until we're happy. You know, you've got to, you're very right, you've got to have real conversations. You've got to manage expectations for your artists. They've got to manage our expectations. But it's really about teamwork. You know, and one of the most important things about our job is putting the right team together and making everybody work together, so that we can maximize everything that we do. Tour manager, it's really important for us. We have a big touring party, you know, lots of crew and additional musicians. Logistics are very important. It's expensive, you know, moving this beast around and touring. And you need to know that you've got somebody who's got a good rapport with the crew, you know, again, with you, that they understand how to be efficient, and that we're diligent in everything that we do with logistics and everything else, and that we have a happy touring party, we have a happy crew, we have a happy band. So yeah, we have a lot of communication with them, and you know, conversations with agents, you know, they vary from place to place. You know, we're having different conversations with our agents repping us here than in America and elsewhere. And really, I think the most critical thing is, like I said, it's about everybody pulling in the same direction. We've all got the same goal, and we want to come out on top in the best possible way.
All right, thank you. This next one is specifically for Diane. What made you realize you wanted to represent Jeffrey Gaines? I know you spoke a little bit on that already, but.
Well, it came very naturally, because having, you know, interned and then been hired, you know, as an assistant at his first management company, I was very lucky. It was a pretty lucky break to be there from the very beginning of his career at a very high point. He was on Chrysalis, EMI Records Group North America. Before his record even came out, Tom Petty, you know, handpicked him to tour Europe. And I was lucky enough to be at some of those shows and to see him solo acoustic. He's played with bands too, but on that tour, Tom went it solo acoustic. And to be able to command a crowd, and actually he did a version of In Your Eyes that went on to be like a radio hit later. You know, he had the audience in Wembley Stadium singing along to that. And I just looked at that. And at that point I wasn't his manager, but I was like, okay, this guy is the real deal. You know, probably one of the best solo acoustic artists I've ever seen. And that's been his bread and butter through the highs and the lows. So when he came to me 7 years later, when they had a natural separation, it wasn't anything ugly. I'm still friendly actually with the first management company. You know, it was just an easy yes. I gave him my notice. I was at Elektra Records then. And I had another person that I was starting to work with kind of that I took on as a management client. And it was a no-brainer for me. And as I said, it's been all different levels from, you know, him doing things on a very high level with major labels and larger agencies to very grassroots. And it's just always been, I feel very fortunate that he's been able to adjust to whatever gets thrown our way. And I'm not saying it's been a piece of cake doing that. And sometimes it's been painful. But, you know, then when things seem to be at the lowest point, when he's going through a transition, then a break comes because he's that hard of a worker and I'm that passionate about what he does. And I've had other clients too that I absolutely love, but he's definitely been the most loyal person I've ever known. So I've been very lucky.
All right, thank you. This next one's for Bonnie. As someone who has done the writing side of music, could you explain briefly why you wanted to get into management?
Everything everyone has said is so good, and I want you to know I'm writing down. I'm not on my phone. And I'm looking down. I've gotten so much. I needed to pivot. That's the bottom line. I made my bread and butter having album cuts. Sometimes that little bit not in the radio lane on an album that was out, you know, cut number 8 that, you know, Rainy Season on a Hunter Hayes album. That's not the big hit, but that's the kind of writer I am. I tend to go there. When streaming came along, my income really dried to a lot of extent because if I was just a half writer on a million selling album, you know, with publishing and writer share, that's about 90 grand. If I get 1 million streams on a song, I can't buy lunch, you know, so it's a huge difference in money. I saw that coming and I knew I needed to pivot. I have done well in my career because of the creative managers I had, the people that were my, you know, product manager. Chris can speak to this. Like, having a good publisher is paramount to success. So when I didn't have, I had several buyouts and Keymans, you know, people got let go, you know, 3 minutes after a company bought my catalog. Oh, we'll keep your Keyman. And then 3 minutes later, they let them go. And so this is going to sound really silly, but I wanted to literally be the publisher manager I really wanted and longed for and knew that I needed. And so I managed 2 producers who are songwriters, and I understand scheduling, I understand budgeting, I understand long-term goal. I needed to pivot, you know, 2020 hit, and I was just watching my income take a 80 to 90% dip, and I want to stay in the music business because I feel like this is just my life. It's my soul, and I want to stay here. But it's kind of the adapt or die mentality. I'm not the flashiest manager in the world. I don't even have a big office or anything yet, but I love the 2 people I manage. I have a great respect for them and their work ethic. I loved what Diane said about the, you know, hard work just goes a long way, and they both work really hard. And I believe I can help them open some doors, and it just was kind of a natural progression. I still love to write songs, but I don't like to starve. I don't like not having food on my table. And so I needed to do something other than just write a song every day. And so the pivot, you know, the risk to reward is always, I'm kind of like John in that when someone said, why don't you start your own company and manage people is just like, oh my God, I need a drink, you know, because it's like, I don't know what that even looks like. And I just decided to put it out there that I was ready to take the step. And it's been scary and great. And as of 2021, you know, the 2 clients I have, I think are going to have an incredible 2022. And it's really all to their hard work and creativity. I just make them show up on time and make them turn in their slides on time, under budget, with a smile on their face. So I just, I kind of pivoted into this world. And, you know, in 5 years, check back with me and see what's happening. But the love of great music has always been my driver. You know, I wanted to write great music, and then when that just became a little harder, I just wanted to still be around great music. So this was a way for me to kind of stay in the game.
All right, thank you. This next one's for James. You said that you're very hands-on. So as someone who manages and has production credits on music videos, when do you know it's time to step back to let the artist's vision shine through?
It's always about letting the artist shine through. You know, that's the thing about, like in UB40's case, for example, we don't get involved in their sort of creative process when they're making music or whatever, because they're so good at doing it. We have to facilitate them being able to work. You know, that's the most important part of our job. And when it comes to music videos, it's more of a case that if they don't have any ideas that they like or that they want, we step in and we can, you know, we get more involved in the process. But myself and Matt, we're very hands-on. We've got a lot of experience in film production and other things. And when it's needed for us to step in a little bit more, we will do. But you know, the creative side is often that, you know, we have to let the artists breathe, because, you know, that they do it best. We give counsel, and we're very lucky because, you know, the band kind of treat us as an extension of themselves as additional band members. So we're always very involved in conversations and the things that they want to do. But from my point of view, it's facilitating their vision is the most important thing. And if they're not particularly bothered about X, Y, or Z, then, you know, we'll step in a little bit more.
Thank you. I have one more before I'm going to throw it off to Janina, but this is more of a general question for managers. What is your organizational style when managing your artist? Any manager that wants to start with that can go.
That's a big part of it. As I think John was saying in his agent business, how important it is to be organized. There's so many moving parts in our business, like, you know, from the touring side of the business and dealing with your agents, to merchandising, to publishing, to record labels, marketing, PR, to the general business administration is a beast of its own. And again, John referenced that not many people particularly know or want to run their own business. And again, like, our time is limited dealing with all of these different things and all of these different aspects of the business. And again, why it's really important to put in place for your artist a really good team of people, legals, accounting, you know, whether you need to make a change in terms of agent-wise, label, publishing. You have so many projects that you're micromanaging, and it's kind of the same in the movie business. You know, if you're running a film, you're running a huge crew, there's so many departments that works. You need heads of department, right, for all of the different things that you need running and all the wheels that need oiling. And it's been good at that. It's been good at relationship management as well, is one of the key parts of this business that's so important. You know, your relationship with your artists and your colleagues in all the different areas. You have to be a calm voice, a decisive voice. You have to be stern. You have to know when to, you know, put your back up and put your foot down you also have to know when to take your foot off the gas a little bit. You know, it's that is a really key part of what we do is organizing and managing relationships to have a successful business full circle for your artists.
Thanks. Diane, would you want to touch on that a little, or?
I mean, I think he said it perfectly, and I think it is important to know when to be stern and when to take your foot off. And we actually had to make an agent change quite recently. And the conversation when you have to let somebody go is never an easy one, but you have to know when it's that time. And, you know, Jeffrey is not a confrontational person, and obviously that's my job. So I have the hard conversations. But he and I always have a very honest conversation before I make that move. But I will make the decision if he's not ready to. And I think, you know, we have had to be a little more self-sufficient in some areas. I've had to take over certain things to say, I'd love to be able to hire a social media person right now. I have to do a lot of it for him instead of, we did have somebody on board doing a lot of that. So it's working when you have the luxury of having a lot of team members, being, you know, very direct about what the needs are and being able to clearly communicate what your expectations are. But there always should be essential things in place. You know, as just mentioned, a good lawyer, a good accountant, and you have to have things like the money and the day-to-day business always in place, because, you know, you don't want to see your artist get audited come tax time. So I don't do his taxes. So most of his things, though, I am very involved in the prep of things, all things, but and trying to have it in order. But yeah, I mean, I've become a lot more. My job has had to change in the last 3 or 4 years, as far as not having as many team members as I'd like. So I think that's where we differ a little bit right now in how big our network of help is. So
everybody's made some wonderful points. I'm gonna ask a couple of questions now for Bonnie and Chris, if that's okay with you all, so we can keep on time. So Chris, could you please explain or tell us briefly some projects you've been working on?
Sure. I have been working with, you know, I was going to say nowadays, you know, the way I've done business has completely changed, because when I first, you know, years ago, when I first got my first deal, it was about, you know, whatever it took to get the song we needed. I wrote with all these people, and it was about songwriters getting the songs to the A&R staff that get it to the producer that gets it to the artist. Well, now the whole industry is so artist driven that it's about, you know, now I do a lot of riding on tour buses now. It's riding directly with the artists. I've been working with Aaron Lewis from Stained. I've been doing some stuff with him. I got 3 songs on his new album coming up, and Eddie Montgomery from Montgomery Gentry, who's a great friend of mine. I've had a lot of success with him. I've been doing, you know, writing with him, and just Ronnie Dunn from Brooks and Dunn, just doing basically. What has changed for me is, instead of writing every day, you know, like, you know, when I was with Warner Brothers, just coming in and writing every day with whoever I'm writing with, now it's become more strategic in my artist, who I know I'm going to be writing with coming up, and even you know, asking the label, to the agent, to whoever, you know, what are they missing? What are they looking for? What kind of things can I bring to the table and work on before I get there, with the artist, so we can all be on the same page when we get there, and do homework instead of just seeing what's in the room that day. It's become more strategic and more, you know, just, I don't know how, just more concentrated on what you need in that moment is what's changed for me.
And I know you said you had been working on a competition that you were putting together as well.
Yeah, I'm also doing, I know Bonnie does this as well, but I've created an online songwriting course called Building Great Songs, and I do mentoring for new songwriters, and I'm doing a song contest where the winner of the contest gets a co-write with me, and you know, and just, I believe that creativity is liquid. It's not solid, and it moves and shapes with wherever you need it, because as a creative person, you have to be that way, because if you have rigid creativity, you're only going to go so far, and that's where you're going to stop. And I too, you said something about bringing great songs. You know, I want to be a part of great songs, whether I'm creating them, whether I'm helping someone else create them, or helping an artist put them out in the world. You know, for me, it's all about getting great music out there, and just because I truly believe that great music can change people. So.
And Bonnie, I have a question for you. Kind of going off of what Chris was saying, obviously about songwriting kind of being very fluid, and being one of those things where you don't want to bring too much into a writing session, but you don't want to go without on a writing session. So my question for you, Bonnie, is what do you bring into a writing session, and how do you do that before? Is there paperwork involved, or do you prefer to do like the basic Nashville split?
I am a believer that if you have three people in the room, it's a 33 and 33% across the board. I've never been a count a line, you know, kind of person. And I do realize that is more of a Nashville math, and I'm okay with that. And I loved everything that Chris just said. Creativity is fluid. Most of the time when I'm going into a room, there's a reason why we're writing. It's for an artist, it's for you know, a placement, or whatever. So I go in with 3 to 4 ideas that kind of match what I think we're gonna do. Now sometimes the magic of the day is it takes a left when I think it's gonna take a right. So the biggest thing I bring into the room is an openness and an emptiness, so that I can allow the moment to be exactly what it needs. I have been sitting, I'm going to see Hunter Hayes later on today. I still work with Hunter. His new album, I have two songs on the newest that just came out. And I love this guy. I met him when he was 15, you know, and he's getting close to 30. So, you know, it's funny, he's close to 30 and I'm still close to 30. So I don't know how that worked, but I sit with him and we're trying to write an up-tempo fun, because that's kind of what he's known for. But if it's not working, I want to be the one to kind of call us out and say, what's going on? Why is this not working? Because sometimes that means there's something that's trying to come through that we didn't plan for. So I have lots of plans, lots of to-do lists, lots of organization. And then I try to give myself the freedom to go off script if that's what the day calls for. I try to also create the environment that is good. I am about 6 years sober, so I get a good night's sleep. I make sure I haven't been out the night before. I eat healthy. I do still have to have coffee. I like a room that is comfortable and safe. I like people around us that are safe and intuitive as to what everyone needs. I love putting song camps together because that's an environment, but it's also a people thing. You know, like what people can go together that really are going to work well together, because I am only here because of the teams of people I've worked with in the past. So I go in prepared, but open, empty for the magic that can happen. I try to surround us with positive things. If that means ordering lunch ahead of time at a great restaurant to be brought in, or whatever that means, whatever necessities are need to happen that day for Hunter or me or whatever artist. Another thing I've been working on is an Emma White record. She's just a beginning artist, just starting to get some great traction. I see her having an incredible year next year. And so I am going into the spaces ahead of time, making sure all the things are in line for incredible creativity. Now, sometimes I get surprised, and that's part of it, is thinking on your feet. But for the most part is being prepared, but being prepared for something to surprise me. Because a lot of times those surprises are the songs that you're most proud of. I don't know if Chris, you hear that, but the songs that I didn't know we were going to write most of the time end up being my favorite songs. So I just try to be the vessel. I just try to be a tool. Well, sometimes I am a tool, and so maybe I need to not do that every time, but just to be usable in whatever capacity, listening to my artist, hearing what they really have to say. Like you said, calling them out whenever, they need to be called out, but yet doing it with kindness and respect. I've never, dressed somebody down in a room or like, you need to do, none of that. It's all based on kindness and respect and love. I love the artists I work with as if they're family. So I try to conduct myself in that way. So it's a great question. Thanks.
What if it's okay? I
Yeah.
like to say something.
Please jump in. Yeah, please.
Because you were talking about not being afraid to be yourself in a room with an artist, and to not. Is the first time I ever wrote with him. I've become great friends with him. I don't know if you guys are familiar with a band called 3 Days Grace. I know those guys very well, and I got set up with them. And to be honest with you, I didn't know who they were when we wrote. So I really didn't care. And I think that's why, when we got together, man, it was just, we just clicked. And I think a lot of it was because I had no idea who they were when we wrote. So I didn't take all of their suggestions. We went back and forth, and we kind of hammered out some really cool songs. And I think it's because, and they told me later that they said that I was the only one that didn't just say, yeah, that's great. Yeah, let's do that. Whatever you want to do. And so I think it's important to have that back and forth and that respect of, hey, this is, I don't think this is working. Yeah, I think this is working. And when the puzzles fall in, it's because everybody contributed. And it makes for a better song and a better career if you have that little bit of rub, instead of just going in with an artist that has sold, millions of records and just saying, yeah, whatever you want to do,
right,
let's do that. And so anyway, so I wanted to.
Awesome. No, thanks for jumping in. I just want to break in and let everybody know we're about an hour in on our scheduled time. We're going to keep going. We still have some questions and some speakers that haven't spoken yet. But we did have this scheduled for an hour. If anybody has to jump, we totally understand. If you can stay with us as we extend, we really appreciate it. And I will pass the next question over to Jennifer, who has some questions for Marty.
Yes, hi Marty. So as a tour manager, we would like to know what planning consists of on each tour and how they differed in the past.
Sorry, Jennifer, it looks like we're out of time. I'll see you guys on the
Nice.
You know, every tour is a little different. Jen, every tour is a little different. I'm working on my new tour right now. I'm working on Justin Bieber's tour. So the first order of business is to, you know, try to figure out the budgets, what a weekly operating budget's going to cost, what a startup budget's going to cost. You know, usually the role of a tour manager varies, like I said, a little bit on each tour. So, you know, usually it's the economic and financial analysis of a tour. Then my next job would be to go, once the creative is approved, to go get bids from several vendors: lighting, sound, video, trucking, busing. So I go get those bids, usually 3 or 4 bids from every vendor. It's also my job to hire all the people that work on the tour, cut their deals. And then once it gets out there, you know, basically just to oversee the logistics of the tour, moving the people around, booking the travel, booking ground transportation, etc. So that, again, it changes on every tour a little bit, but that's predominantly what it takes.
Okay, great. And on the topic of trust, how do you manage to gain and keep the trust of your clients?
That's kind of been answered a lot on this panel, and I think look, I try to be as honest and transparent as possible with my artists, and you know, I think that I tell them that I would rather have you fire me for telling you the truth than for lying to you, and so that has kind of managed to keep me afloat for the past 40 years.
That's great. Okay, back to Ebony.
Sorry, let me unmute myself. Alrighty, so for this question, I'm sorry, Nick, did you want to jump in before I ask this question?
I think the next one is, I'm sorry about that. I think the next one is for William has a question for James.
So James, how do negotiations work from a manager standpoint, and how does it change when an agent gets involved? John, I guess you could chime in with that too.
How do negotiations work with regards to touring? Is that what?
Yeah.
So I think it's important in our instance. So we spoke to Jeff about, you know, our next US tour outing, and we had a frank conversation and said, this is where we want to be. These are the fees we want to be hitting. We had a discussion about the economics of the business and sort of why, and we let Jeff go and make the deals happen. It's and then we pester him and keep pushing him, and every time he comes back, you know, we keep saying, go and get more, or go and do this, or go and do that. But no, it all comes back to that transparency. Jeff needs to understand our business, okay, and our goals and what the band want and what we want to achieve. It's our job to communicate that to him. And again, it's a team game. You know, if Jeff needs us to step in any kind of way that he might require, we'll do that. But yeah, it's a partnership, and we have a mandate. Jeff understands that mandate, and you know, he'll tell us if he can, you know, what's realistic and what's not, and he'll go the extra mile, you know, if we ask him to, which is great, which is the kind of relationship that you want.
Awesome.
Thank you, James. Appreciate that.
There's Jeff. So next, we've got Austin, a question for John.
Yeah. So John, the next question that we had for you is, what does being an agent mean to you?
Oof. Well, I'll speak in practical terms. I think it's a never-ending job. I think that it happens all day long and all night long. So what what it means to be an agent, I think, is that being an agent is interwoven with your entire life beyond being at the desk. My girlfriend just got a job where she has to work after work, and she's blown away by the fact and frustrated by the fact that she's home working. And I'm like, welcome to my world for 25 years. You know, this is how it goes. Yeah, I think also the balance of relationships is very important in terms of what it means to be an agent. I think you don't want to be too friendly with the promoters, but you want to be friendly with the promoters. You know, you want to make sure, I think that in terms of, you know, what it means to be an agent, you have to understand the term give, take, not just take. Sooner or later, that will come back to get you, if that's the thing. So I've always kind of struck that line and negotiated against myself when I saw that I had the opportunity to do so, to, you know, give a nod to a promoter who would then in turn give a nod to me on another band 3 years down the road, who has no idea that they got it because of something that happened 3 years earlier. I think that's a part of being an agent. And I guess also, like what Bonnie said earlier, to me, being an agent is like, I don't really even know what else I would be doing if I wasn't in the music. I have no other skills whatsoever. I could barely make an egg. So if I wasn't an agent, I would just be like sitting here watching, you know, reality shows, I guess. So I guess I'll end on that part. You know, being an agent is like, it's an all immersive thing, I think. And I do think that there's people that are made for it and people that think they're made for it and they're not.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And then next we're gonna have Jennifer ask some things.
Sorry, I love that sentiment, John. I was just going to say, because I feel the same way. Like, you know, a lot of people who work in the music business, I mean, for me, I told myself there's nothing else I can do other than, you know, work in music or film. This is what I want to do. I think most people who sort of manage to get a career, you cannot possibly imagine doing anything else. So, you know, it takes that kind of commitment.
Thanks. Next to Jennifer, a question for Marty.
Yes. Marty, if you could briefly explain what your job may consist of leading up to the tour and the day of the show.
I'm going to tell you that I think I have the best job in the music. I know all you guys are going to disagree with me, but look, you know, I think really it's just a matter of organization and a matter of logistics. I will tell you this, that I just got through doing the Rolling Stones tour. We finished a couple of weeks ago, and it was one of the most stressful and challenging tours I had ever done in my 40-year career because of the COVID issues and the protocols that we were dealing with out there. But it also was one of the most rewarding tours as well, because we managed to get through all 15 stadium shows without any health issues or COVID issues. But it was a stressful. 85% of my time on that tour was dealing with COVID issues on top of the normal jobs that I have. So I think we're touring in a different time now and a different age. And I think that, you know, we've all got to try to navigate it as best we can. You know, on a show day, it's just really a question of getting the artists to the venue, letting them do their sound check, and then letting them prepare for a show. I think, you know, I think I've heard this from many of these panelists that really touring, it takes a village. It takes, on the Rolling Stones, it was over 200 people. On Beyonce's tour, the Formation tour that I did, I had over 400 people on the road. And it really takes a village. And so basically the role of the tour manager is to essentially let people do their jobs and go hire the best people you can, let them do their jobs, and know that you're there to support them and help them.
I'm going to jump in, Jen, if you don't mind, with this next question, because Marty, you just mentioned, some pretty incredible blockbuster tours, and in regards to Rolling Stone, it was a pretty difficult one. This ties into this question: how do you handle mishaps during tours without spilling too much tea behind the scenes? And what's your process of bouncing back from those obstacles and snafus?
The best way to deal with those kinds of things is to remain calm. Never show panic, never let them see the fear in your eyes. And I think, John said, some people are made for the business and others aren't. I think what you have to do is try to make it look effortless, that you have to manage these big tours and make it look effortless. And that's the key.
And if you all don't mind, I would add to that, maybe except for songwriting, which is more of a creative process, all these different roles in the music business is very amorphous. There's no formality and accreditation. You just kind of go for it. But all of our roles center around service, and especially agents and managers. You're serving your clients. You're serving, our clients on both sides of the table. and I think that's a really important, spirit to bring with you into your careers. Is even when it's at the darkest hour, you're involved in something that you're passionate about, and that can give you the drive to persevere and follow through and serve the various masters that you have throughout the business. Next, we will go to Ebony, who's going to pose a question for each speaker, and we'll call on you one at a time. Ebony, go ahead.
All right, so we have heard a lot of great information, advice, and feedback from you all. But at this moment, we would like to know if you would like to share any funny stories from your career. So we will go ahead and start with Diane.
There's a lot of funny stories. And I think the funniest ones have been when I'm gone on the road as the tour manager for Jeffrey, and he's opened for, say, Stevie Nicks and Sheryl Crow. And we're pulling up in a rental car behind the tour bus. And I'm trying to explain before he had gotten his pass for the tour that he indeed is on the show. So things like that, you have to have a sense of humor about. And I definitely am the one in those kind of situations when he's been in that scenario that I do the speaking, because it's a little humbling for the artist. But, that's part of when you're in that kind of a wonderful situation of being on a large arena tour and you're not the marquee act. But then at the end of the day, it ended up to be a wonderful tour and evening, because Stevie Nicks brought him up, loved him, his performance, and brought him up at the end of the night to do the encore. So that's how the whole tour went. So some of the humbling moments I've had to find the humor in it. So that would be one thing that stands out for me.
Great point.
All right, we're gonna mix this up and we're gonna go with Marty next.
I could go on forever, so I'm not gonna waste anybody's time, but Diane, I actually remember that tour that Jeffrey opened up for Stevie, because I was Stevie's manager for that particular tour. So I do remember Jeffrey opening.
She was so wonderful to him, and Sheryl Crow was wonderful to him too.
Oh no, he was great. Look, I'll tell you just a brief recent story. So I'm out with the Rolling Stones. It's my first day on the job. It's my job to get the band and walk them to the stage. So Keith Richards and Ronnie Wood are in the dressing room together, and I go in. And usually I wait for Mick Jagger to tell me that his people to tell me that he's ready. And once he's ready, I grab Ronnie and Keith, and then we walk down to Mick's dressing room, and then we go to the stage. And so it's time to go on, and I walk in and there's Keith and Ronnie, and I say, hey guys, it's ready, it's showtime, let's go. And Keith looks at me, first day on the job, and he says, fuck you. And I said, sir, it's an honor to be told to be fuck you by yourself. And then we laughed, and then we walked to the stage. So that was my reason.
That's awesome.
I'm loving these stories. So next we're gonna go with John.
Okay, I'll make mine brief. I would say that really quickly, I think there's a funny story every single day I've been in this business, without question. First of all. Second of all, when I first started, somebody that was a senior to me told me that I should keep a journal, and I should have listened to that person because I would have an incredible book. But going back to the story I was telling before about, not the story, just the lesson about the job being 24/7, I was representing the artist Deep Purple, and I booked Deep Purple at the Cape Cod Melody Tent in Cape Cod, Theater in the Round, in 2005, and confirmed the show. And the promoter, a guy by the name of Vince Longo, called me up and he said, you know, we have a decibel limit at this place, and did you know that Deep Purple has got the Guinness Book of World Record for being the loudest rock band that ever existed? And I was like, you know, I mean, I didn't see the dB limit in the offer, so I just kind of like shimmied myself uncomfortably in my chair. I was like, we'll be fine, right? So we kind of I kind of kicked the can down the road a little bit, like, oh, I'll deal with this another time. But it ends up that the day of that show is the day that my daughter's born, my first daughter. So I'm in the hospital now. It's like 10 o'clock in the morning, and my ex-wife is giving birth, and I'm getting a phone call from Vince Longo, who's telling me that the band's sound checking and that they're violating the decibel limit, and that they're going to get charged a penalty. And I'm in the hospital, and my father-in-law, ex-father-in-law, is looking at me like, get off your phone for the day. You gotta disconnect. So the baby's born, and then we're going to grab lunch. We're down on the street. We're going into a deli. I'm on my phone dealing with it. I'm calling my boss. I'm like, can you please deal with this today? And he's like, I don't know. I got something to do. And I'm like, I got something to do, you know? I've got a baby being born. I just had a child. My father-in-law wants to kill me. You got to let me off the phone. I think the end result is that I was able to literally use the birth of my daughter to get the promoter, Vince Longo, to look the other way on a penalty on the dB limit. I literally used the birth as an excuse to get out of it. So there you go.
That's amazing.
Talk about
I think, sorry to interrupt, John.
Please.
That's amazing. And I think Adam has done the same with situations where I used personal things to get off the hook on things. I think that's why he might be laughing either for that or for when my second.
No, I'm laughing for two things. One, I think that's part of the job description, and two, and two, when Epstein's second son was born, I had an issue with a booking, and Jeff had a very similar story to what John just described, I imagine. I was not there with him in the hospital, but I assume he went through a similar circumstance.
Crazy.
Anyway.
Thanks, everybody. Ebony, who's next?
All right, we're gonna go with Chris.
Hey guys. Well, I have an interesting. This was one of my most interesting days as a songwriter. I was writing with Billy Gibbons, and from ZZ Top, and he's a character anyway. I love that guy. So we go in, we're writing, and he says after the session, he says, you got to go to me. You got to go with me to Bobby's house. I had no idea who he was talking about, but I knew I was going with him wherever he was going. And he goes, let's stop by the bar first. So we go by this place called Whiskey Rhythm in Nashville. And Billy's sitting there, and this guy comes up to him. You know, he has the hat on, you know, the hat Billy always wears with the things all the way around, the beanie. And so he's very recognizable, and, you know, of course, the beard. And this guy comes up to him and he says, Mr. Gibbons, he said, I love what you've done. He said, I've been a huge fan my whole life, but I have a question for you. I've always wanted to ask you. And Billy's sitting there with, I don't know what he had, but some sort of drink. He goes, oh, yeah? And the guy said, you sign your name, Billy F. Gibbons. What does the F really stand for? And Billy just like stood there and just stared into space. And he turned to the guy and he said, Texas. And the guy, like, just the blank look on the guy's face is like he just got tased. and it was just like, okay. And so anyway, later on, we ended up going to, Bobby was Kid Rock. So we ended up going to Kid Rock's house, which he has a house that's wrapped in, it's a trailer, a double wide trailer wrapped in mossy oak camouflage.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And he, we ended up over there. So it's me and Billy Gibbons and Kid Rock and he had a few drinks by now, he was feeling it. And man, he was just, he ended up talking to the television. I won't go on, but he ended up saying, you know what the difference between them and us? Glitter. And he song, and he kept saying glitter song. He goes, they're about the glitter and we're about the song. And I was just, I was just sitting there, I was just thinking, well, Billy Gibbons just put me in the same group as him as a song creator. So I can die now. So anyway,
Nice.
it was a crazy night, but.
What does the F stand for though? Does anybody know?
Yeah. Texas.
That's amazing.
Thank you for that, Chris. So we're gonna go with Bonnie next.
I am a pretty private person, and in my career, I've had to go out on a bus and work on a record. Some of the artists I work with built a studio in the back of the bus, and we work back there, and it's great. And one particular run, we had been working just, probably 20 hours. I'm so tired, and I'm on a bus full of guys, and so I'm trying to figure out how to do the bathroom on a bus and all of the things, and I'm so tired, and I finally get to my bunk and I crawl in and it's not empty. So that was I think the biggest thing I can suggest is always be willing to laugh at yourself, because that took me about 2 days to be willing to show my face again. I have so many embarrassing moments in my career, but that was one that stood out quite well. It's like, oh, hey, I will move. Thanks. So anyway, that's mine.
First rule of bus riding: you can ride a number 1, but you can't go number 2.
No, exactly. Exactly.
Thank you for that, Bonnie. And last but not least, we got James. Hey. Can you hear us?
James, can you hear us?
Yeah,
I think you're muted. There you go.
Hands on me now. I was just having a word with Matt because, it's like, what story should we tell, really? Or should we plead the fifth? I mean, it's lots of examples. I mean, you're working with a reggae band that love to smoke weed, for example, which isn't legal outside of many states in your wonderful country, which has made it legal. There was a story where there was a big show in Paris, massive gig, and Jimmy and Robin, the drummer and guitarist singer from the band, We had a few days, so they hopped over to Amsterdam, you know, because they love it there. And coming back through Charles de Gaulle, you know, they stupidly had brought a lot of weed back with them. And they're going through the airport, and there's this little dog, you know, one of those dogs that comes and it's coming towards Jimmy and starts, you know, yapping at his leg. So Robin tries to distance himself and run away, and this whole sort of episode ensues. And obviously the police, you know, they come to the boys aside, and there was a situation whereby they were carrying a lot of the stuff that they wanted to bring back to Paris. And you know, it's a troublesome scenario. But after a lot of convincing that there was a big show tonight in Paris, and there'll be a lot of very unhappy people if these guys didn't make it, if they were, you know, arrested and taken away. After some good persuading, they were let go, and
Wow.
the show was allowed to continue. And there's a lot. I mean, this is the thing. Like every cliche thing you can imagine, touring, it's a wonderful, fun time, you know. And I think it's really important that everybody is having a good time. And there are so many situations that you come across, and so many amazing people that you meet. And you know, as you know, what it's like after every show. Well, in our case, anyway. You know, the guys love to have a drink with the fans and have a party, and it's a joyous time when it's all running smoothly. And there are lots of incredible memories that I'll never forget, and that I'm very grateful and blessed for. But that's a typical situation. Or you know, when we're traveling across borders on the bus, because we're an island in the UK. When we go out to Europe, we take a ferry or we go on the underground. You know, there's been certain circumstances when people had something that they wanted to take with them. There's a little practice of, and in the bunks of the tour buses, you've got air conditioning units, and often sometimes when you're coming close to the border, you might find someone trying to stuff something up the air conditioning unit of your bunk. So that it's not, so that, you know, if it's found, then it's yours. You know, lots of games like that can happen from time to time. But I think I should stop talking now. So
harmless pranks, right? Harmless pranks.
Yeah, exactly.
Just be glad it was France and not like, I don't know, Thailand or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I'll refrain from saying any more. But you know, sometimes people who don't have had to live without many restrictions or boundaries don't tend to take well to them.
All I'll say is, as P-Funk's agent for 13 years, I've heard a lot of stories.
Yeah.
But all right, well, thank you all so much. We're gonna, before we see if there's any questions, I just want to say a big thank you to the speakers. We're very grateful to have you, and especially, you know, John, your trooper, showing up sick anyway. And thank you so much for sticking through. And what a great opportunity to hear from, you know, some people who are at the forefront of the, you know, their position in the industry. If there are any audience questions, you can use the raise hand feature. We have a couple minutes. We'll try to squeeze a couple in if we got them, but we have gone quite a bit over, and I know some of the interns might have to run. I know somebody's got graduation rehearsal and stuff like that. So feel free to peel off if you have to, but if there's any questions, now's the time to raise your hand. And absent that, we are, as Ebony mentioned, we are recording this. We will share a link so that people can review and look back if there's anything you missed. Other than that, please have a joyous holiday for everybody that's celebrating, and a healthy and prosperous new year. And thank you again for your time and your insight.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice meeting everybody.
Great,
Thank
thank
you.
you guys.
Great
Thanks,
job,
Thank
interns.
you.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Feel better, John.
See ya.